rich country, but its people are not. You might be thinking, oh, that's me. But if you live in the United States or Europe, you and your friends are probably relatively well off compared to those in other countries. This video is not about having a gratitude or suggest that you shouldn't take everything for granted. Instead, I want to talk about a unique country in the world, Japan, a nation characterized by its wealth, yet its people remain relatively poor. Certainly, from an objective economic perspective, Japanese people enjoy a higher standard of living than those in developing or third world countries. The perception of poverty among Japanese citizens must be understood in relation to the country's overall wealth. But it sounds odd, right? Followers of economic news may be aware that, as of 2024, Japan's economy is experiencing a resurgence. Since the collapse of the economic bubble in the 1980s, Japan's economy is now booming, leading to full employment and the recruitment of foreign workers. Moreover, Japanese stocks are reaching new highs daily. Some commentators suggest that Japan's lost decades have finally come to an end, heralding the return of its heyday. Despite Japan's robust macroeconomic landscape, a closer examination of key indicators reveals that individual affluence is not as widespread as one might think. Not everyone benefits equally from the economic upswing, with disparities in wealth distribution apparent. But is this assertion accurate? Well, it is actually supported by straightforward statistical evidence. Data from the OECD in 2020 shows Japan's average wage at $38,515, placing it 22nd among 35 countries. This figure is approximately half of the leading United States average of $69,392 and 22% lower than the OECD average. Remarkably, Japan's GDP per capita, consistently around $38,000 since 2002, is even lower than that of its neighbor, Korea, underscoring a stagnation spanning over 2 decades. This situation is indeed intriguing. As of 2023, Japan's total GDP stands as the 4th largest globally, surpassed only by the United States, China, and Germany in terms of economic size. Despite this significant national wealth, the average wage of Japanese citizens falls towards the lower end among OECD countries, and their purchasing power parity, so-called PPP, is not particularly high. How is it that a country can rank so high in GDP, yet its citizens do not enjoy a commensurate level of wealth? This is the paradox of Japan, where the nation itself is wealthy, but its people are not. A country that enriches the nation, but impoverishes its people. A country where long hours of work do not result in wage increases. A country where, after receiving a salary, taxes and various deductions leave nothing. A country thought to value thriftiness, but in reality is just poor. This is a common narrative among Japanese people online. The recognition of poverty among Japanese citizens is acknowledged within Japan itself. The economic downturn of 4.8% in 2020, triggered by COVID-19, led to a shift in media tone from 2021, with reports increasingly highlighting Japan's economic decline. Before the pandemic, such concerns might have been overlooked by the Japanese public. However, the rise of internet usage and access to a wealth of global information have prompted a re-evaluation of their socio-economic status. Japanese citizens are now questioning why, despite their nation's wealth comparable to that of the United States or Germany, their living standards appear lower than those in smaller countries. Especially, the global popularity of Korean culture, epitomized by K-pop and K-dramas during the COVID-19 era, has further fueled this introspection, leading to questions about why Koreans who are living right next to Japan seem to have a higher spending and earning capacity, despite South Korea's GDP ranking 12th below Japan's. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, the conversation surrounding the economic struggles of Japanese citizens has gained traction online, leading to intense media scrutiny starting in late 2020. While Japan has long been perceived as a wealthy country with relatively poorer citizens, the level of public dissatisfaction has never been as pronounced as it is now. This growing concern has been reflected in literature, with books exploring this phenomenon being published, and in media commentary, where it has been suggested that Japanese citizens may need to seek employment opportunities in China, Korea, or Southeast Asia should the current trend persist. Moreover, it has been observed that the wages of Japanese workers have significantly declined in comparison to their counterparts in other developed nations, highlighting a deepening economic disparity. Once a dominant economic powerhouse that threatened the United States, why have the Japanese people come to this state? The core issue is stagnant wages. Over the past 3 decades, as wages in other developed nations have surged by double-digit percentages, the average wage increase for Japanese workers has been a mere 4.4%. Remarkably, wages for individuals in their 20s have actually seen a decrease, leading to a scenario where someone earning in 2024 could be making less than what their father did in the 1990s, which is absurd if you apply that into your life. Okay then, why does this happen? Firstly, the situation can be attributed to prolonged periods of low interest rates and minimal inflation. Following the collapse of its bubble economy, Japan adopted a policy of maintaining low to near zero interest rates, a stance it has taken for far longer than the United States, which only saw interest rates drop to 1% in the late 2010s. This environment of low interest rates and controlled inflation has led to minimal price increases across Japan for the last 3 decades. Consequently, from a corporate standpoint, there has been little incentive to increase wages. Under normal economic conditions, rising prices would lead to higher sales and, subsequently, increased wages. However, due to Japan's economic stagnation, this typical cycle has not materialized, contributing to the wage stagnation observed today. Secondly, Japan's distinctive work culture plays a critical role. For wages to increase, a focus on value-added production is crucial. However, this is not the primary concern for many Japanese individuals and companies. The cultural norm of lifetime employment and seniority-based promotions remains prevalent. The paramount objective for most Japanese companies is to ensure the security and welfare of their employees up to retirement. This leads to a conservative approach towards investment, with a preference for internal savings or the acquisition of overseas real estate rather than domestic reinvestment or innovation. Even leading corporations are hesitant to embark on new ventures, opting instead to hoard capital. This reluctance to distribute profits among shareholders and employees contributes to a growing wealth disparity. As the nation and its corporate entities accumulate wealth, the stock market may not reflect this prosperity, and the workforce sees relatively little benefit, exacerbating economic inequality. In the aftermath of COVID-19, Japan's economic landscape has undergone substantial changes. It's reported that stock prices have now exceeded those seen during the bubble economy period, signaling significant inflation within the country. This inflation isn't limited to real estate and stocks. The cost of essential goods and services that directly impact daily life, such as food, has seen a dramatic increase of 88.2%, while dining out costs have risen by 15% compared to the previous year. Japan's economic challenges extend beyond stagnant wages to include demographic shifts. The aging population, a common feature in many developed nations, presents a unique set of issues in Japan. As the elderly retire, they often live on a fixed income, sometimes facing financial constraints without their pensions. The responsibility of supporting this demographic falls on the younger generation, leading to increased taxes and social security contributions amidst already low wages. This situation places a significant burden on Japan's youth, compounding feelings of economic stagnation and disenchantment. The Japanese government recognizes the gravity of this situation. A wealthy nation with impoverished citizens signals a lack of domestic consumption and stagnant tax revenue, undermining economic vitality. Moreover, a disillusioned younger generation can jeopardize the nation's future prospects, potentially stirring political unrest and calls for governmental change. In response, the government has initiated measures to alleviate these pressures, including tax incentives for companies that increase wages, raising the minimum wage, and efforts to reduce non-regular employment. Despite these initiatives, transforming deeply ingrained cultural and economic practices remains a formidable challenge, one that Japan is confronting head-on. So, what do you think? With frequent reports of Japan's economic improvement, did you assume that the Japanese people were also faring well? While researching this topic, I asked a close Japanese friend about the situation in Japan and his thoughts. He was skeptical, expressing doubt that Japan's corporate culture could change overnight. He also mentioned concerns about the rise of the AI industry and discussions on replacing human jobs, which could critically affect Japan. This is because many young people are entering fields that AI might dominate in the coming decades. Can Japan overcome the disparity between being a wealthy nation and having impoverished citizens? I'm not entirely sure, but one thing I am certain of is that Japan is at a crossroads where new approaches and bold investments are necessary. This concludes the short story about Japan, a rich nation with poor people. Thank you for watching.